Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake. Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Welcome. You're listening to the Renegade River Show, and my name is Mike Hewett. Just a couple personal notes before we get going. First, a hearty good afternoon to Muskegon, and of course, as is starting to turn into a little bit of a ritual, a good morning to my sister Brenda Brown out in Las Vegas. Here in Michigan, it looks like they're talking about some rain. Before we get going with the show today, though, I want to share a couple quotes with you, and they may at first seem unrelated, but I assure you they're not. The first is, if once the people become inattentive to the public affairs, you and I in Congress, in assemblies, judges, and governors shall all become wolves. It seems to be the law of our general nature, in spite of individual exceptions. That was Thomas Jefferson. And the other of the two quotes, and again, I tell you, they may seem a little bit unrelated, but I assure you they're not. The other quote, there are two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword, the other is by debt. And that was John Adams. And stew on that as we go forward, if you would. I'd like to introduce our guest today, the State Director of the Madison Project of Michigan, Jack Hagendijk. Jack, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the invitation, and it's great to be with you this afternoon.
Jack, I started initially to write some notes about your political bio, and I ran out of paper, and I thought I'm just going to do the short version of over 20 years, as far as I could tell, of crusading and advancing the conservative agenda in the state of Michigan. So I want to thank you for what you've been doing and applaud your efforts, sir.
Well, thank you again very much, and it's been a labor of love for the most part, but it's something I've certainly enjoyed, participating in.
Tell me a little bit more, if you would. What is, and tell me about, and what is the Madison Project of Michigan?
Yeah, well, the Madison Project is a federal political action organization out of Washington that has been in existence for over 20 years, fighting for conservative values and working to identify, endorse, and help elect true conservatives. And the Madison Project is one that only will support candidates who are 100% well-rounded conservatives, both on the social side and on the fiscal side. They're pro-life, pro-traditional values, pro-marriage, but they're also pro-limited government. They believe in low taxes, states' powers, 10th Amendment, and protection of the Second Amendment as well, those kind of things. And so just recently, Madison decided to start setting up state chapters to do the same thing at the state level, and Michigan is the first one. So we have the Madison Project of Michigan, and as the director, my charter is to go out there and spend the year looking for true conservatives and help them get elected, whether they're incumbents running for re-election or whether there are some open seats where we can find the best quality candidate. There's quite a battle going on in the Republican Party, for the soul of the party, kind of the moderates versus the what I would call the true conservatives. And I think we need to work hard to elect those people who really stand by the Republican Party platform and constitutional principles. And so that's what we're going to be doing.
Very nice. Hey, Jack, before we go too much further, I want to make sure that the phone you're on is good, because you were cutting in and out and kind of we were almost losing audio for a minute. So I want to double check you on that. On the Madison thing, let me just to make sure I understand. If you had a moderate incumbent Republican, is it likely that the Madison Project may seek a conservative candidate and challenge that incumbent?
Oh, I think that's entirely possible, Mike. I would say first that it's not our intention to threaten or to try to get office holders to be in fear of us so much as to work with incumbents in office to educate them, remind them of what the conservative principles are, what their voters would expect, and hope that they will in fact vote as conservatives. But if they don't, then they need to know, they'll be put on notice that we may well look for a candidate in the primary. It's not about the general; it's really about the primary. That's where you have the opportunity to elect real conservatives. And there's about 15 open seats in 2014 in the House and probably 5 in the Senate, where we believe that we can elect Republicans and we can elect conservatives. And so that's what we're really going to be focusing on.
Very nice. Well, the reason I really asked you is I'm one of those fellows that I'm probably at odds with a lot of conservatives in that I'm against term limits. In fact, often, this may raise your eyebrows, but in fact, often I point at you as an example of why term limits are a bad thing, because I thought what you did was a great thing when you were in our State House of Representatives. And the idea that we've conjured up a system that says, what a great job, you've got to go, that to me makes no sense. And in fact, most of our founding fathers wouldn't have been able to complete their tasks if they'd have been term limited out. So that aside, I can't possibly stand by the concept that I'm against term limits unless I'm also willing to say incumbents from time to time need to be challenged, whether they need to be removed. That's certainly up to the people. But it's one of the reasons I started this segment today with the quote about the people's inattentive to public affairs. The electorate has got to get involved. We've got to find ways to reach out and touch them, and that's one of the things that you've invested your time in, from what I can see. So I applaud you on that. But where are you at on term limits and all of that as part of this?
Well, yeah, I appreciate you asking, Mike. And I've always personally been a supporter of the concept of term limits, and I believe that the government should not be so complex that it's that difficult to actually accomplish things, but rather, citizen legislators are the best kind. And the problem with incumbency is the longer you are in office, the more you become kind of ensconced in all the trappings of power and influence. And as flawed individuals, we tend to be susceptible to that and start abusing that. Now, sure, there are good people that hopefully would not, but I'll say this: term limits is not something that is going to be at the top of our agenda. Although I will say, what's even more important to me than that would be the enactment of a part-time legislature. I think that lawmakers spend too much time doing too many things that they shouldn't be, and it's really an abuse and a waste of taxpayer dollars. But, I guess we can agree to disagree, and as I say, there's a lot of other issues that are much more important on a day-to-day basis that we're going to be fighting for. I
can tell you this, Jack, I'm not certain that we entirely disagree. I guess just to back up or buttress the agreement that we've got is that I'm an absolute advocate of a part-time legislature. When I ran in 2004 challenging an incumbent, half of my campaign was wrapped around the concept of a part-time legislature. When I look at Lansing, or frankly, when I look at Washington, I mean, talk about idle hands and the things that they create. It's just a fascinating concept. But that said, on the term limit side, not to beat it up, to me, I blame the problem caused by not having term limits on party politics, because if I've seen Republicans and Democrats alike, they'll embrace their incumbent without knowing absolutely anything about he or she. And that to me is really the bigger of the problems. If they knew, they wouldn't wrap their head around he's a Republican or she's a Democrat. They'd move forward with replacing that person with a qualified candidate.
You're right, Mike, and part of the problem is a lack of education on the part of the voting public. We do have term limits. I mean, I have to acknowledge that, and that's every 2 years. There's an election, or every 4 years in the Senate, and that's the opportunity to remove somebody. But the problem is, as you say, the supporting incumbents, if they have the right letter behind their name and not knowing enough about where they stand on the issues, makes it very problematic to ever replace those folks. Now, you touched on something that's primaries and incumbents being challenged. I have always supported that, and And I've been challenged in every election I ever had as an incumbent, and I've welcomed that. And I said, that's going to make me a better candidate. It's going to make me answerable to the voters. But, when I've taken on incumbents, I've taken a lot of criticism because there seems to be this sense of entitlement that says, well, you can't do that. You're running against somebody from your own party, and you shouldn't do that. You should support the incumbent. But I've always believed that what makes any incumbent better is when he's challenged from someone in his own party on the issues and the principles that a person from our party should stand on.
I think you're absolutely right, and I'll give you a personal, specific example. Back in 2004, I touched on it a minute ago. Back in 2004, I challenged Barb Vanderveen in the 89th District House race in the primary.
Yep, I remember.
Yep, and over the years since then, though, actually, frankly, immediately following that campaign, Barb and I went out and had a cup of coffee, and we've talked. I think it made her a better candidate. I think it made her a better state representative thereafter. And irony being what it was, we're 8 years later from that. Her and I have been on a number of different political functions together where we've either joined in or been on the same team going in the same direction. And I just recently offered her my endorsement in her pursuit of the 2nd Congressional District Republican chair race. So, I mean, that's the benefit of slowing down and stepping back from party or back from dogma and saying, what are we really doing here and how can we advance people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and it should be about respect, not about beating each other up. And I remember
Jack, we're right on the verge of losing you again.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think I got a pretty good signal, but I'm sitting in a house, and the signal shouldn't fade. But let me try to get a little closer to a window or a door here. And if it gets worse, let me know. But no, I agree, and I remember Barb as a colleague, and we didn't agree on everything, but and I had the same thing in 2006. I had a primary opponent, and I think he forced me to be better. He lost, but 2 years later he won the seat. So.
Are you still with us?
Yeah, are you there?
Okay, yep, boy.
Yeah, okay.
All right, very nice. Hey, let's move on a little bit if we might. Tell me a little bit about your where you're at on right to work with all that's taken place recently, and I know that you've been involved in promoting it for a number of years.
Yeah, I wasn't the first, but I was one of the early proponents of right to work, introducing a bill in the legislature in 2007, and have always talked about it and advocated for it. And it really picked up steam at the beginning of 2011 when two freshman lawmakers kind of made it the central focus of their campaigns, Mike Shirkey in the House and Pat Kolbeck in the Senate. And in early 2011, I have these center-right meetings in Lansing, and we get people together to talk about the issues, and they came in and talked about right to work. And the next thing that happened was a coalition was formed of individuals who are interested in working to pass a right-to-work bill. And we had 30, 40 people together in a room back in February and March of 2011. We started the Michigan Freedom to Work Coalition. We created a website. We held statewide press conferences in late June announcing our intentions, and we went to work on the issue. And, a number of detractors said, hey, we support right to work, but you got to understand that this is a 10-year process. Well, we didn't want to believe that, and we kept fighting for it. And we knew that the governor had said he would sign a bill if it got to his desk. And Mike and Pat in the legislature were very, very deliberative, and they worked on their colleagues, built support, and then I think that the unions got spooked with all of the attention that we were giving to this issue. They made the fateful decision to put an anti-right-to-work bill on the ballot, and that, in its defeat, is what opened the door very quickly to the passage of a right-to-work bill. But the real work is ahead of us, Mike. We've got the bill in place. It goes into effect in March, the end of March, but there's a number of efforts being marshaled to try to defeat this bill over the next 2 years, and we're going to have to work hard to defend it.
Tell me something. One of the things that surprised at least me, because I must not have been watching as close as I thought I was, but one of the things that surprised me is that in advance of this recent legislation, I would have guessed that Governor Snyder was not in a hurry for right to work. And all of a sudden, the next thing we know, he's signing something. So how did we get from his early comments that was not on his front burner at all to him signing something?
Well, you have to admire the consistency of the governor in that even before the primary, when he was our candidate, he was saying that he would sign the bill, but it was not on his agenda. And after the primary and during the general election, he said the same thing. And after he became governor, he continued to say that. And even into the summer last year, he still said it's not on my agenda, and I don't want it on my agenda. But I believe that the governor knew, and this is just my opinion, I believe that the governor knew from the very start that right to work would be good for the people of Michigan and for the state, for the economy. But he also knew that the political winds were not blowing in the right direction, or at least that was his belief. And I think that, again, with the defeat of Proposal 2 by, I think, a 58 to 42, it was a pretty sound defeat. I think he saw that the opportunity was there to get this done. And so he said, okay, it's on the agenda. And 7 days later, we had a bill.
Yeah, that was, I think in the past, he'd maybe, well, at least part of the past, he'd looked to Wisconsin and must have thought, I don't want that circus here. That probably played a little bit of a factor in his initial thinking. But it certainly worked out well for Michigan in the end.
Yeah, it did, and I think that he realized that if this was going to get done, they needed to get it done quickly, because part of the problem was in Wisconsin is the way it dragged out, and these demonstrations were going on for weeks, and it got pretty crazy in Lansing. I was there that day, but the whole thing was over and done inside of a week, and so that was good.
Very nice. Hey, Jack, we're gonna go to a break. Please hang on, because I've got a whole bunch more on my list of things to talk about. Okay. We will be back shortly.
You're listening to News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC has extended your auto show savings. Right now, you'll still get auto show bonus cash of $500. Only at Benton. Get 0% financing on select models. Savings up to $8,000 on a 2013 Chevy Silverado. And $500 in auto show bonus cash. Shop the largest GM selection you'll find in Michigan. And nobody sells you a new vehicle for less. The time to buy is now. Plus, you'll receive the additional $500 bonus cash. And the biggest auto show discounts are waiting for you. Plus, we want and need your trade, and nobody is paying you more for it than we are. Get behind the wheel of a new 2013 Chevy Silverado 4x4. Payments as low as $198 a month. Chevy Cruze only $89 a month. Or a Chevy Equinox just $119 a month. $500 auto show bonus cash. Only at Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC. Both sides of Henry Street, Muskegon. But hurry, time is running out for you to save. It's where Michigan shops. Benton.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
The Talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Renegade River Show. My name is Mike Hewett, and we are on the line today with our guest, Jack Hogan-Dyke, who is the chairperson for the state director for the Madison Project of Michigan. Jack, welcome back.
Thanks, Mike.
We were talking on Right to Life, but let me, if I can, have a segue a little bit down the path. Tell me your Medicaid expansion. What's your thinking on that topic in general?
Yeah, well, and for your listeners who maybe are not familiar with that term or that expression, we've got Obamacare coming down the pike here in 2014, and one of the provisions is an expansion of Medicaid, which is the state-provided insurance. And the Supreme Court, with their ruling, said that the states, had the right to decide whether or not to participate. And several states have said that they would, but also a number of them have said that they would not. And Rick Snyder has made it part of his budget proposal that we would enact legislation to expand Medicaid to everyone that is below 133% of the poverty rate, I believe. And it's going to add hundreds of thousands of new Medicaid recipients in Michigan. And the premise is that the federal government's going to pick that up after a few years. And but I guess all I would say is, do you believe it when the president says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help? The money is just not going to be there, and we're going to be ending up on the hook for all of the extended cost. And I believe that the only way for us to see a future where the largest number of people who want health insurance can get it is in the private sector, and we need to dismantle Obamacare in any way that we can. And at this point, I think the only way that we can is through the 10th Amendment states' powers, where the states have the right to say to the federal government, we don't want you to tell us how to provide for the care of our residents. And I think we can do that. Other states are taking that firm position and saying, no, we're going to figure this out on our own, and we're not going to rely on the government to pick up something that we know when the time comes, the money will not be there. And besides, even if we say let the federal government pay for it, where does that money come from? It's still coming out of our pockets.
Yeah, I've been a little bit surprised on a state level as we've went through this Obamacare process over the last year or so. Even before the election, before the Supreme Court ruling, there were a number of our state legislators that were advancing the health care exchange. And I guess I might be even worse than Snyder or you in this topic, because it's my interpretation that not only will the money not be there, that the actual long-term plan is for the federal government to shift some of the burden of Obamacare specifically to the states. So not only do I believe they're not going to be funding the state, I think Governor Snyder is very wrong, but I think they're actually going to be billing the states. But aside from that, I think that everyone's probably in agreement that the only thing worse than a third-party payer system, which is what we had up until recently, is the single-payer system that we've got coming, which is where Obamacare is trying to walk us towards.
Yep, I think that you're right, and Mike, and it's just another example of what I would call the nanny state, where the federal government is going to come in and try to do things for us, whether it's for the state or whether it's for the individuals that live in the state. And I don't think we've ever had a demonstration of the federal government doing something that the private sector could do that couldn't be done much more efficiently in the private sector. And, the Mackinac Center for Public Policy is a great resource to get some great articles on why this just can't work. And I would point to an article just a couple of days ago on the Mackinac Center website from Jack McHugh entitled Medicare Expansion or Medicaid Expansion, Beware of Obamacare Gifts. And it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's like so many other programs. When Medicare was first introduced, it was only going to cost a few $1 billion, and within 10 years, it was 10 times more than that. And Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act is going to be the same thing. It's going to be an enormous expansion at taxpayer expense.
It all reminds me of the shadow that was the Social Security program in the first place, where you qualified at 65 when the average life expectancy was 58 at the time.
Yep,
so
that's right.
None of these things were ever going to grow into the monsters that devour us, and yet that's what they're doing. They're devouring us. What's the single weapon that we've got to try to slow or stop that process, do you think, Jack?
Oh, I think it's the state legislature.
Okay.
Senator Bruce Caswell from down in the Hillsdale area has introduced a bill that would prohibit the expansion of Medicaid. But aside from that bill, the first thing that has to happen for this to go through is for the approval by the legislature of the budget proposal that was put forward by the governor this past week. And they can, as a legislature, simply refuse to fund it, just to say we are not going to put this expansion of Medicaid and the costs that go with it. It's about 800. It's estimated it's going to be about I think it's 800 million over the next 7-8 years. They just say we're not going to fund it, and that would put a stop to it. It's the same thing as you mentioned, these health insurance or health care exchanges. The governor advocated for the creation of a state health care exchange, and because of the pressure that a lot of individuals at the grassroots put on the legislature, they couldn't get the bill through out of committee. And so finally the speaker threw up his hands and said, well, I guess we're not going to have state-run health care exchanges, which means we're going to let the government do it, the feds do it, but now the burden is on them for the funding, and it's not on us.
Now, were you an advocate for the health care exchange?
Oh no, I was not. I don't think the state should set it up, and I don't think we should have a federal health care exchange either. But ultimately, I'm not so sure that we will, because when the time comes for the federal government to fund the exchanges that the states refuse to do, the price tag will be so high that I think Congress will look at it and say, we just can't do this. We're going to have to find it. It will be one way that I think Congress can stop the creation of this enormous monster called Obamacare.
The only thing that scares me about that tactic, first off, I agree that it's fundamentally, it makes sense, but we're trying to rationalize sometimes with irrational thinking. Those are the same folks that think $17 trillion in total debt is okay, and that it's not going to tip over the boat. And I find that very fearsome thinking, to be honest with you. That's where I started today, when if the people are not attentive, then they'll become wolves. And I guess from that standpoint, that's where I'm at. Tell me this, though, not just because we've got such a limited time, I want to move on a little bit. Where are we at on state gas tax?
Well, that's another thing that was in the governor's budget proposal was the increasing the state gasoline tax by, I think it was 19 cents a gallon or something, for the purpose of funding road repairs. And the premise is that we need an additional $1.2 to $1.5 billion in funding to fix and improve the roads. Well, I don't think there's anybody that would argue, including me. I would not argue that we need the we don't need the funds. We do need to spend more money on roads, but the question is, how are we going to get that money? And although conceptually, I like the idea of a tax that is dedicated for a purpose. It's like a user fee, and it makes sense to say to people who drive, you're going to pay the tax to fix the roads because you're the ones that use the roads. But if that is to happen, then there needs to be a reduction in taxes and expenditures in another part of government spending. We don't need an increase in spending because today it's been demonstrated that there are enough places in state budget that cuts could be made that easily $1.5 billion could be raised just through reductions in spending to be reallocated for roads. But it's too easy for politicians to say, well, we need something, let's just spend some more money, let's just raise taxes.
Jack, probably a little over a year ago, very informally, there was folks that come out and met with some of the Tea Party groups and some of the Tea Party leadership, myself included, and were pitching the tax increase for the roads. And in fact, I got a free breakfast at the Pearl Street Big Boy in downtown GR.
Wow.
And I said at the time, and I still believe it. Yes, the roads need work, and yes, we need to spend some dough. But if the governor would take an opportunity to use this crusade of his, for lack of a better word, this advance of his to say Michigan's going to change the way we do things when it comes to contracting for these type of projects.
Right.
I mean, if he would have come forward and said, we're not going to just see if we can get the most expensive, slowest labor force we possibly can to do it, we're going to reinvent it and do it the same way that a restaurateur would be forced to, the same way Renegade River, the shop, would have to when we look for construction work to be done. You go out, you take bids, and you get the one that promises you the most and has experience that you can point to and say, yes, that organization. But they don't do that. They do it the politically correct and frankly insane way. Yeah. So I'm watching them build this bridge over the Grand River out in Ottawa County, and I got to tell you, it's an absolute joke. It really is. They spent over a year to build a bridge with there's nothing on either end of it. They say that I'll be able to actually cross the river in 2016. I got to tell you, if those same folks were the guys that were building the infrastructure of the 1950s, we would be in serious trouble. So to my mind, my way of thinking is where I'm going, Jack, is that I think the governor could have used this as an opportunity to say Michigan truly needs to change the way it does business, and we're going to start with this road project by saving whatever the difference between common sense versus what we're doing right now is. So what do you think about that approach to this? Well,
no, I think you're right, Mike, and there's a number of areas where we can find savings, and what you're referring to, I think, is this whole idea of project labor agreements and prevailing wage.
Yes.
That increases the cost of every project by 20 to 30%. It's union scale pay when you have merit shops that are non-union that can do the work and have proven, they have a track record of doing quality work for substantially less money. But on top of that, there's other areas in state budget that are earmarked transportation, like the Comprehensive Transportation Fund, which pays for a number of things that are not roads, such as city buses in places like Detroit where nobody's even riding the bus, but the taxpayers are paying to buy these buses and move them around the city. So there's a number of areas for savings. But for that matter, why should there be a State Department of Transportation that's doing the road building and the road design and the architecture and all of that when private sector could do that as well? It's the Yellow Pages approach that says don't pay a state employee to do anything that you can get out on a contract out of the Yellow Pages. But, I will say this about our governor. I think he's an intelligent guy. He's a businessman. He's not a politician. But I wonder whether, I can't believe that he would think that this Republican legislature would actually enact a tax increase. But I almost wonder if maybe he isn't posturing to get this out there and then use that as an opportunity to work with the legislature to actually make the cuts, the reallocations, or moving to the private sector on some of these, so that the $1.2 billion that are needed for roads can be found without increasing taxes on the people of the state.
One of the things I found fascinating about Governor Snyder is, frankly, I've been opposed to almost everything that he said. However, his actual action, with the exception of the tax on senior citizens, I reject that. But when I look at all of the outcomes of what's going on, I think, what jeepers, I agree with him again. So it may be that you're right. Maybe he's just way more wily than I am, because in the end, or maybe he's stuck with a state legislature he'd rather not have, because the outcome of what he's doing, I'm agreeing with. I don't agree with what he's saying all along the path. So,
well, and the other option that's been floated out there is increasing the sales tax by 2% from 6 to 8, an 8% sales tax. Now, that doesn't sound very good, but I tend to favor a consumption-based tax versus an income-based tax, and I would like to see the elimination of the income tax in the state altogether. And there are reams of data that will demonstrate that the states that do not have any income tax are the states that have the strongest economies. And I know that Senator Mike Shirkey, in fact, is working on this issue and saying perhaps this discussion of increasing sales taxes to pay for roads will provide the opening to shift us from an income tax-based state budget to more of a consumption tax base. And I would support that, but I would not support a net increase in taxes. If we can eliminate the income tax in favor of increase in the sales tax, I think that would be a good thing, and would probably result in a net increase in revenue, just because you'll see more business activity created as a result of it.
Tell me this, Jack. I've got on my list of things to talk about today, and it kind of dovetails into what you're saying. I'm just for full disclosure, I'm the congressional district director. I don't know that actually means anything, but but for Michigan Fair Tax, I've been an advocate of fair tax since 2004, and so kind of these two ideas fit together. When I first advanced it, at least from my own political background, it was I'm a fair taxer, providing we have an amendment that says income tax is gone, because my fear has always been we'll end up with both. So whether we call it fair tax or anything else, I'm policy wonks like you and I understand, but I remember having one of the lobbyists in Lansing tell me that I was really beating my head against a wall, even mentioning fair tax in the middle of my political campaign. So it makes me think that even though we're not calling this fair tax, I'm wondering if the governor and you are helping yourselves with talking about an increase in sales tax.
Well, and I do think that the term fair tax has sort of taken on, kind of a life of its own, and it's almost like, fair tax, those guys are nuts. But the concept is moving away from income tax and towards consumption tax, or a sales tax or some kind of consumption. And as I say, the data will show that is a better way for a state economy to work and bringing revenue to the state. But you're right; they have to go hand in hand. We have to see an elimination of the income tax in favor of this increased, consumption or sales tax. And the biggest criticism, of course, is you're going to be taxing the poor, you're going to be taxing senior citizens. They don't work, so they don't generate income, but now they're going to be paying more in taxes. But that can easily be addressed by providing certain exemptions and so forth based on your age or whatnot. So that's not really a big problem.
Are you talking, Jack, let me just cut you off for a second. Are you talking about if I were a senior citizen, I get closer every year, but if I go in to buy a car or a stick of bubble gum, do I hold up my driver's license that demonstrates that I'm over X age and then I'm not charged sales tax in your proposal, or am I getting a prebate the way fair tax advances it?
I think in most cases it's pretty hard to say, I don't have to pay sales tax because I'm a senior, but I think to keep it simple, everybody just pays whatever the going rate is on everything that they purchase, but they get what you called it a prebate, or they get an exemption or a payback from the state up to a certain level. In fact, everybody would get that. So let's say that the first $10,000 of consumption or whatever the number might be at the 8% rate, you would get back in a monthly check back from the state that would offset. That way, those basic necessities that you're purchasing would not be taxed. It's really a very easy system to set up and manage.
Hey, Jack, we're going to slip to a break. When we come back, I want to kick around firearms freedom.
All right.
We'll be right back, everybody.
You're listening to News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Roof Off Game On 2013, brought to you by Subaru of Muskegon, will make Midwinter Break a weekend to remember. Hockey teams from around the state, as well as charity and alumni games, sure to heat up the ice. And off the ice, the Subaru Awareness Center will bring together the brightest scientific minds in Michigan, working to help kids overcome autism, diabetes, cancer, neurofibromatosis, and more. February 16th and 17th at Lakeshore Sports Center. Learn more at roofoffgameon2013.org.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
Be honest. Will owning a bigger TV help you get ahead in life? Will another pair of shoes make you a better person? Probably not. But what if you could speak another language? If acquiring a new language excites you more than acquiring more stuff, then wait till you hear this. As part of its biggest language learning event in history, Rosetta Stone is giving away demos of its powerful language learning software absolutely free. For your free demo, call 1-800-377-8189. And Rosetta Stone has made language learning more convenient than ever. Learn on your computer or iPad, then practice on the go with your smartphone or MP3 player without ever opening a book or memorizing boring vocabulary again. Do you want more stuff, or do you want a language that will last a lifetime? After all, it's all about priorities. To try a free demo of this powerful language learning software, call 1-800-377-8189. Again, get your free demo now. 1-800-377-8189. That's 1-800-377-8189.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
Fox News Radio, I'm Karen McHugh. Debating the use of drones against American citizens and fighting terror, Senator Dick Durbin says new wars require new tactics.
We are in a different kind of war. We're not sending troops. We're not sending manned bombers. We are dealing with the enemy where we find them to keep America safe. We've got to strike a new constitutional balance.
The Illinois Democrat was on NBC's Meet the Press. Republican Senator John McCain wondered aloud on Fox News Sunday why the CIA is the ultimate arbiter of who lives and who dies.
Since when is the intelligence agency supposed to be an air force of drones that goes around killing people?
John Brennan, the president's choice for CIA director, defended the administration's use of drones during his Senate confirmation hearing. Digging out of the blizzard across New England, Peter Judge with the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency is pleased overall with his department's response.
We thought we did a great job of preparation. Nice thing about these storms, you usually get a heads up.
Portions of the Bay State got hit with 28 inches of snow. Fox News. We report. You decide.
Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. Cloudy skies with occasional light rain showers at a high of 42 with southeast winds at 20 to 30 miles an hour. A steady rain early tonight, then remaining cloudy with a few showers overnight, a low of 38. South winds 20 to 30. Rain and snow in the morning tomorrow, then mainly snow in the afternoon. Still windy, southwest winds 25 to 35, and temperatures nearly steady in the mid to upper 30s. News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to Mike Hewett on the Renegade River Show, and today we've got State Director of the Madison Project of Michigan, Jack Hugendijk, online with us. Welcome back, Jack.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
Jack, when we left off, I mentioned the term firearms freedom. Tell me about it.
Well, that's an expression that a number of state legislators are now using to describe what they believe is an important issue for, on the Second Amendment front, and that is that protects the rights of citizens to bear arms. And in Michigan, Senator Phil Pavlov introduced a bill. It's Senate Bill 63, and it's called the Firearm Freedom Bill. And what it says is that any firearms that are completely made in Michigan may be possessed and sold in the state, notwithstanding any potential federal gun bans claiming authority based on the U.S. Constitution's Interstate Commerce Clause. So, in other words, if you purchase a gun that was manufactured here in Michigan, then you're exempt from any current or future federal laws that might try to ban the ownership of that weapon. And now some would say, well, there's not a lot of firearms manufactured in Michigan, and in fact there are some, but not very many. But I do think that it does open up the door for a potential relocation of manufacturers to Michigan. In fact, Senator Jones, whose committee took up the bill quickly and passed it out of committee and sent it to the Senate floor, even made the comment that the Remington Corporation is in the state of New York. They're very unhappy with some of the new gun bans that are being enacted there. Who knows? Maybe we could lure them to Michigan.
Sure, and Ruger's got some facilities out there also. Hey, on a personal basis, I'm not even sure if you know what I've been doing lately, but I own Renegade River, which is a sporting goods store, and it holds an FFL. Along with that federal firearms license, I also hold a federal firearms ammunition manufacturer's license. And so when I'm watching these various pieces of legislation swirl around, including the one you cited, keeping in mind that what I'm slowly working towards is the instigation or the beginning of a startup company to make ammunition. And anyone that's listening that's anywhere to deal with the sporting world or firearms in general knows that we've got, I don't want to call it a crisis, but we've got a complete absence of ammunition in the market right now. And I'm told by my suppliers that the top 5 or top tier firearms ammunition manufacturers are contracted out for more than 4 years. So that causes me to look in my safe and say, wait, I've got that ammunition manufacturer's license. What am I thinking? But the reason I'm bringing that up is that, of course, the legislation you're talking about certainly raises my eyebrows with curious interest.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's included, the ammunition as well as the firearms themselves. And it's really part of a larger discussion about where do we stand as Americans on the Second Amendment issue of the right to bear arms, and not forgetting that it's not really about hunting, and it's not even really about protecting your home so much from an intruder, although that's part of it. But the reason the Second Amendment was written was to allow citizens to protect themselves from a tyrannical government, whether it's outside or inside, whether it's our own government, because that was what brought along the independence in the first place, was the tyrannical government of England, and that's what we need to protect. But at the same time, Mike, if I may, let me also mention a bill that's been introduced by Greg McMaster, whose district is not far from where you are, and that one is one that would protect and authorize really school administrators to give or allow employees of the school to carry a concealed weapon, a pistol or what have you, inside the school. And there are a lot of people, of course, that object to that, but there are many, many people who support it. And what I would say is that what we're finding in our culture today is that people and children are being taught by adults to fear guns, and what they should be afraid of is not firearms, but of individuals and people who seek to injure others. And firearms are one of the things that provide the protection against that. It's not the firearm that should be feared. It's how people would use that firearm. And at the same time, concealed weapons can be used to protect other individuals, and that's been proven time and time again. And I would wholeheartedly support this legislation because, I think the worst thing you can do is put a sign in front of a school that basically says there's no guns in here, so have a nice day. And I mean, that's a license to kill for a crazed individual.
That's you're referring to Second Amendment free zones in general. Just on on a separate note, we had Representative McMasters on this show a few weeks ago.
No,
very, very good guy, and I, as you can imagine, also support that legislative piece that bill is advancing. And on the note of guns in school in general, one of the ironies to it is that it's a political hot button. Clearly, there are people that are extremely for, extremely against it. But when you talk to the folks that are doing the CCW courses or the concealed pistol license courses, it is a fascinating number to see how many teachers are in there getting their concealed weapons permits. And we've got teachers that are afraid to go to school. I got to tell you, that's a heck of a statement to say for our culture. Forget what your position is. The listeners, you may agree or disagree with us on guns in school, but when we have teachers that are afraid to go, we've got a serious problem that we've got to look at, and that's not that's not guns. It's social in my view. Hey, before we run out of time, though, I want to segue to one last topic, if I might. Tea Party versus the GOP. GOP is going through some, I hope it's growing pains, but tell me where you're at, Tea Party versus GOP.
Well, I think, the term Tea Party is another one that some have tried to turn almost into a pejorative, and we may need to modify the term. But what Tea Party people really are, in my opinion, are Constitution conservatives who fully support the platform of the Republican Party, not so much the candidates necessarily or the people that are in office, because so many of them do not uphold the party platform. The party platform is very limited government, pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, pro-Second Amendment, and if I can use the term anti-government. But you don't see Republican lawmakers acting that way. And I think that you're right. There's quite a conversation going on here. And, we're going to have a state party convention in a couple of weeks where we have a quote-unquote Tea Party candidate running for chair against an incumbent chairman. And, I don't know that incumbent chairman is worthy of a lot of criticism. But nevertheless, the conversation is taking place. And I think one of the questions that, in regard to state party and party leadership, that is, I think, fair to ask is, what is the role of party leadership in holding office holders and candidates accountable to upholding the principles of the party? What is the point of electing a Republican to office if he then votes for deficit spending, he votes for tax increases, and so on? And then I think it's a fair question to ask: can we hold these guys accountable?
You remember years ago when Tea Party was first getting going, and Trent Lott laughed and kind of mocked the Tea Party. He said, "We'll co-opt it. Don't worry about it." And now I see state party chairs being challenged by Tea Party candidates, and I'm kind of smiling. So I'm thinking, who's co-opting who?
Yeah.
and
it's good for these guys to, as chairs, the state chairs that are there that are running for re-election, they're being challenged, and I think it's good for them because it'll help them know, take a stand on what they believe and where they want to take the party in the future. I think this is a great conversation, and I think it's good for the party. It's healthy for the party to have this, dispute, if you will, and I think we'll come out stronger on the other end as a result.
I think, though, what I've got to caution listeners and people that are involved, I've got to caution them a little bit. It's kind of what I was getting at when we first started today, is that you did a great job. We need to get rid of you and start anew. And one of the things that's important, I've been called establishment myself, and I kind of giggle every time someone thinks of me as establishment just because I've been around for a while. And we've got to make sure that that the populist rhetoric is tamped down a little bit while we're looking forward to trying to advance genuine policy. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I kind of missed that last thing that you said. Ask me the question one more time.
Well, one of the concerns I've got is that the populist rhetoric that sometimes swirls around, especially when you get off on the internet blogs and all of those things that are now firing some of the engines that are propelling these changes. Sometimes the populist rhetoric calls for change without any foresight about what the change might be.
Oh, right. Right,
and
sure.
So those things concern me when we want the epitome of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We need to, in my mind, not say you've been doing such a great job for 20 years as an activist. We got to replace you with someone we don't know. I just think there's got to be a little bit of prudence as we advance.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Mike, and I think that's what's good about this conversation is it's not about us versus them, but it's us having sort of an internal family conversation and then saying, okay, let's band together to work to advance the causes that we believe in. And you started the program with a couple of good quotes, and I have one that I want to throw out there, kind of here at the end. This came from Edmund Burke, who served in Parliament a couple hundred years ago in England. He's famous for a lot of great quotes, but here's one that was new to me that I just read recently, and he said this: "When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle." And, when you think about Tea Party and GOP, compared to the liberal progressive agenda, we're really all on the same page, and we need to associate, we need to work together, we need to build bridges, find the common ground, and create a strong opposition to the liberal agenda that's out there. And if we don't, it'll be an unpitied sacrifice and a contemptible struggle.
Very true. Jack, thank you for being on the show. We're out of time. I want to quickly say happy 11th birthday to my grandbaby, Brianne. And listeners, thank you very much. See you next Sunday.